What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the WrestleRant channel. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and enjoying your Friday so far. I mentioned in a post here on the channel just yesterday, actually, hours removed from the passing of WWE Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan, that I would probably be doing a stream discussing the life, legacy, complicated, good and bad of the Immortal WWE Hall of Famer. Obviously, Immortal no more. But I decided to hold off on it until today, just until we could see some of the more reaction and some of the news to the news that's come out on social media from his contemporaries, people that he's worked with, things that we have not seen come out from certain people, which is completely understandable. And we're going to get into why here on the channel and in this video here today. But I didn't really want to wait until next Thursday's WrestleRant radio to discuss the news. It was actually mere minutes removed. We got done with yesterday's episode of WrestleRant Radio. Shout out to Tommy Bechtold. That I saw the news that Hulk Hogan passed away. Actually, Mr. Marceau, who was not on the show yesterday, he's on vacation currently, or was as of yesterday. He was the one who broke the news to me, actually. He texted me saying, "Rip Hulk Hogan," or whatever it was. And I had seen the updates on his health in the last couple of weeks, or at least I had heard it. I know Bubba the Love Sponge had been saying some stuff saying that Hulk Hogan was practically on his deathbed. And there were people that came out from Hulk's camp saying, "Oh, that's not the case. He's totally fine." I saw that tweet from Jimmy Hart so he passed away yesterday, did Hogan. Jimmy Hart posted a tweet, I want to say Tuesday night, saying, "Oh, Hulk's doing great, baby. He was at I can't do the Jimmy Hart impression, but Jimmy Hart tweeted on Tuesday night, "Oh, yeah, I saw Hulk Hogan at karaoke on Monday or whatever. He's doing great. He's doing fine." Very clearly, he was not at karaoke on Monday. Maybe he was. I don't know. More details have started to come out exactly as to what happened. TMZ reported, I believe PW Insider as well. He went into massive cardiac arrest yesterday after being in and out of the hospital in the last month or two. And I guess more details came out today, per the Wrestling Observer newsletter, that they actually turned his home in Clearwater basically into a hospital. That's how poorly he was doing. So they didn't really give any credence to the rumors that were out there that Hogan wasn't doing well, but he certainly was not doing as well as they were trying to make it out to sound like on the, what they were talking about, in these, updates and whatnot, like what Jimmy Hart was saying. It looked like he practically copy and pasted some sort of update that he was passed along. So, of course, it's always up to the family's wishes as far as how they want to proceed with that sort of thing and share what they want to share, what they do want to share, what they don't want to share. When Eric Bischoff was on Ariel Helwani, just maybe on Monday, if not late last week, I think it was only a few days ago on Monday or Tuesday, he didn't even mention Hulk's name. I mean, he probably mentioned Hulk's name, but he didn't give any sort of update as to what was going on with him. And Ariel didn't ask, so that was probably an indicator that he wasn't doing well. So passing away yesterday at the age of 71. And as I mentioned a couple of moments ago, leaving behind a very complicated legacy is the WWE Hall of Famer. And in many ways, wrestling would not be what it is today without the Hulkster, for better or for worse. I mean, there's so much that can be said about Hogan, and all of which I'll attempt to get to and try to remember, again, the good and the bad. For anyone tuning in, first of all, thank you. I appreciate it. If you have any thoughts, any kind of thoughts, or no thoughts at all on the passing of Hulk Hogan, please share them here in the video, and I will be sure to share them and read them off as we get going here. Dragstar Professional saying, "Rest in peace, Hogan," in the chat as well. Thank you for sending in the chat, my friend. So, yeah, I mean, really, where do we begin? But in many ways, I mean, it's kind of easy to not really forget, because a lot of people have brought this up in the last, little while since he passed away just yesterday, about 12 hours ago or 24 hours ago from when we're talking right now. But wrestling would probably have been unionized by now. Had it not been for Hulk Hogan, maybe something else would have happened along the way, or it didn't become possible. But the unionization of wrestling was stopped infamously by Hulk Hogan many decades ago. And there's a pretty decent chance that wrestling would have been unionized by now had it not been for Hulk Hogan. So again, when I say, and when many other people say, largely for the better as far as, the eyes that he brought to the product, being a pop culture icon, his contributions to WrestleMania, WWF, WWE itself, early on when Vince McMahon was really looking for his first major attraction. And Bruno Sammartino was that guy, having been WWE champion for a decade plus, or whatever it was, on and off for almost a decade. He didn't really lead the company in that global, domination that Vince McMahon Jr. wanted until Hulk Hogan came around in the early to mid 80s and became WWE champion, putting the championship on him, beating the Iron Sheik, and then going on to hold the championship for several years. And he played a very pivotal role in that. Of course, his contributions to WrestleMania, like I mentioned, being involved in the first 9 WrestleMania main events. I hate to even acknowledge WrestleMania 9 because he should not have fucking been in that match, with Yokozuna coming out, practically cashing in as Hogan in the Bank and becoming WWE champion. But yeah, Hulk Hogan took part, as we all know, in the first 9 WrestleMania main events. Multi-time WWE champion as well. So much success across countless companies, and then doing what very few have been able to do and completely reinventing himself, and then not only leading WWE to great prosperity in the 80s, but then doing the exact same thing almost a decade later in WCW as a heel, as one of the original members of the NWO. Again, unprecedented success, and one of the few people whose name that you can bring up that people will automatically recognize and remember as just being like, Hulk Hogan will forever be synonymous with his legacy, of course, but really professional wrestling as a whole. There's a few people whose names you can bring up to the casual, not casual fan of wrestling, but like the casual person who may not know wrestling, and they'll probably know who they are. To me, the only 2 names that really broke through that echelon, that really broke through that glass ceiling, so to speak, were Hogan and The Rock. The Rock because he was in so many movies. Hogan was in a lot of movies too, a lot of which were fucking garbage. And The Rock's movies aren't, 5-star cinema classics or anything, but The Rock is a bigger global star today, as far as movies are concerned, than Hogan was as far as movies were concerned in the 80s and 90s when he was doing the nanny shit and Suburban Commando and all this other stuff. My favorite Hogan cameo in a movie will forever be, and I know my roommate Connor would say, my college roommate would say, Gremlins 2, because he made a great appearance at the end of that movie, or towards the middle. I forgot when that was. My favorite Hogan cameo in a movie will forever be Muppets from Space, when he shows up as NWO Evil Hogan, acknowledging that he's heel now, and then putting Rizzo the Rat like back in his container or something like that, and a scene that he shared with also a fellow former WCW World Heavyweight Champion, David Arquette, which is also amazing. Sudo, thanks for joining, saying R.I.P. Hogan here in the chat. I know this was an emergency surprise stream. That's kind of the point of these WrestleRant reaction streams. Discussing the news as it happens, not really a scheduled stream. I wasn't really sure when I would exactly be going live here today. And like I said, I was originally planning on doing it yesterday, like literally right after it happened. But I thought, let it wait for a little while as we see more people come out and discuss this and we get more details on exactly what happened. But yeah, man, I imagine SmackDown would probably be dedicated to Hulk Hogan tonight. I mean, for as much negativity as there is surrounding Hogan, and I will say first and foremost as well, I've seen a lot of posts. My entire Twitter timeline, of course, dominated by Hulk Hogan reaction yesterday to the news of his passing. But I don't really think it's fair for me or for really anyone to tell you how to process the news. I mean, just because he was responsible for getting a lot of us into professional wrestling, and he kind of, again, made the business into what it is today. I can't, I sound like a broken record when I say that because it can't be overstated enough. But at the same time, he is a very problematic person. I have said that several times in several posts in the last 24 hours. Hulk Hogan was an extremely problematic person. It was 10 years ago to the day of his passing. It was almost as if when that original shit went down a decade ago, God gave him a decade to be like, all right, brother, you got a decade to kind of redeem yourself here. I'll give you 10 years. And if you don't fully redeem yourself by the time by those 10 years are up, then I'm bringing you with me to wherever. I kid. I probably shouldn't say that, but it is kind of eerie that it was exactly 10 years ago to the day that Hogan was blackballed for the racist rant stuff that was recorded years earlier. But the problem was, like, it took place from years earlier. And of course, he was blackballed from wrestling, really everything, for a few years there. He did make amends with WWE. They were always going to welcome him back at some point, and they did. It was always about what he said, because what he said was pretty fucking damning. If you go back and listen to what he said, the way that he said it, context is everything. And I may have been at one point of the mindset when it happened 10 years ago. People make mistakes, and it happened so long ago. Again, I mean, it's pretty bad. And what's worse, and I've said this since then, is that he really did not show any accountability. Like, anytime that he would speak about it, which was really far and few between, There were not many instances where he was even asked about it because he probably wouldn't have allowed it to be brought up in an interview or something. But anytime it was discussed, his go-to response was always, don't get caught. Because he was involved in the whole Gawker thing that leaked the tapes in the first place and whatnot. And I think he won a bunch of money from that. I'm not sure how much money, because I think Gawker went under, so how much money he actually got from that, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously his privacy was leaked, but the stuff that he was saying, it wasn't meant to be public, but it doesn't take away from how bad of what he said in that tape. So for anyone to feel a certain way about Hogan, you don't have to give a fuck. People are saying that they're glad he's dead. Whether you think it's respectful or not, I mean, I have my own opinion on it. But people are allowed to process this sort of thing as it happens. Are they going to the family's home and saying, fuck Hulk Hogan, I'm glad he's dead? No. They have every right to post on their social media or not post about it. If you don't say anything about it, it's completely fine. If you express happiness that this, racist is gone from the world, that's also a completely fine thing as well. Again, the problem is with the racist stuff is that he did himself no favors in, I don't want to say backtracking, but holding himself accountable for his actions. Coming out, making amends with the world, saying he's sorry, and sincerely apologizing for what he did. He never did anything of the sort. Now, he would continue to lie and bullshit about other wrestling-related stuff, which was always entertaining, because you can always poke holes in the logic of Hulk Hogan, no matter what he was talking about, whether it be the 92 Wembley main event with the cancer patient not there. He knew that he died when he saw the empty seat in the front row of Wembley Stadium, a show that he wasn't even fucking on. I mean, the Hogan lies are endless. Hogan's lies, as far as like the harmless stuff, they didn't really, like when he claimed to have been contacted about joining Metallica. I mean, come on, that is just completely preposterous. That doesn't really harm anyone. It's just a harmless. There's been a lot of shit that he lied about and has said that's obviously very damning and damaging that he should be held accountable for. And even the other lies that were just so abhorrently not true, he should also be held accountable for. But it's those Hogan lies that I always wished someone would sit down and address with him. Like, can you please make sense of how you think you once traveled around the world for 400 days when there's only 365 days in a year? Like, can you explain that math to me? I know he said that in an interview or whatever many, many years ago, but like, surely, like, he has since, I mean, he's gone now, so we can't ask him, but like, surely you would think back on that and know that that's bullshit. Like, even with the time zone differences, that just doesn't make any sense. And obviously, we all know the meme, which we've discussed and have shared it many, many times here on the WrestleRant channel, WrestleRant Radio, hashtag AskGSM with all. Because like Hogan's name's been brought up a lot, not for Hogan himself, but like Becky Hogan, Mercedes Hogan. Like it's like that whole thing. Like we joke about it, like Becky Balea and shit. There's been this whole topic of creative control, Mercedes Moné. No one had the creative control that this fucking man did in WCW. Actually, a great example here. I have the book right with me. I did the Becky Lynch book review last week here on the channel. Excellent book, by the way. Well recommended. The next book I'm reading, actually, is this one. And I didn't just start reading it because Hogan passed away. I was already reading this as of like, I started a few months ago, but I got back into it last week. My friend Mark Ramondi, great writer, did an awesome book on the NWO, not meant to be a cheap plug-in or anything, but my point is, he talks about in this book, and it's been discussed before in the Death of WCW book as well, the creative control that Hogan had when he was there and just the absurdity of it. I mean, someone shared the WCW contract yesterday that Hogan had. Like, it's online for you to read. And the stuff that he was promised and that they even signed on, like Hogan wanting that stuff is one thing. For them to put pen to paper and actually make it official in a legal binding contract is just wild to me. So, I mean, that will always be part of his legacy as well. Not wanting to put a lot of other people over. I mean, he did put over, like 2002 specifically, he was on his best behavior. He was, putting over Kurt Angle. He put over The Rock at WrestleMania. Put over Brock Lesnar on a random fucking SmackDown. Lost to him in a bear hug. Under the premise, mind you, that he would come back later in the year and win the WWE title from Brock at Survivor Series. And that was obviously turned down. Thank God. But still, I mean, he did put over his fair share of people. And I think a lot of people have said this as well. Even before he passed, I think Mark actually talked about this on Talk is Jericho the other day. that I think him losing to Warrior in the Mania 6 main event really kind of fucked with him because he kind of felt like he should always be on top. And he made the right call in leaving WWF in 93 and going to WCW where he could really reinvent himself as a heel and whatever. But for him to always be on top was just completely just ridiculous. I mean, at some point he had to put other people over and make new stars, and he just refused to do so. The Warrior one didn't really work out. Not through Hogan's fault or anything like that, but Warrior as the guy of WWE was a failed experiment. So they did eventually rely back on Hogan to be that guy until he left the company in 1993. So anyway, as we keep going here, AJ Watson said in the chat, the golden era will never be forgotten. Rip Hogan. Thank you, AJ, for joining us. Pseudo also said, wonder what kind of tribute SmackDown will have, like if they give a 10-bell salute, as they traditionally do. The crowd reaction will also be interesting to see. Hopefully everything goes well. I'll get back to that in a moment. Thank you for the comment, Pseudo. Billy said, hi, Graham. Whatever people say about Hulk in later life is the reason WWE is as big as it is now. I mean, like I said, you can't deny the fact, and I've said this many times in the last 24 hours, it's important to acknowledge both sides. I've seen a lot of people just acknowledge the good stuff, the memories of Hogan being responsible for them getting into the business. And it's not just like, oh, let's not talk about the negative because he died. Like, I know that's like a normal thing in a lot of cases for celebrities or really just people in general. It's not as if like, okay, we can't talk about the fact that he had creative control in WCW and talk about his worst matches. Like, we're not talking about that sort of stuff. I mean, I did actually when I talked about the creative control stuff. I mean, we're talking about some pretty fucking serious stuff. We're on multiple occasions, and not just in the racist rant that was leaked online a decade ago. But going back to the car accident, I think his son was involved in 2 decades ago. I don't know if he wrote about this in his book or how it came out, but there was also some like pretty bad racist stuff that came out of that as well, as far as what he and the rest of his family believed, or at least he and his wife, who seems to be just as, I don't know if evil's the right word, but just as fucked up as Hogan was, as Hulk Hogan was. I mean, his wife also seemed like she was a chip off the old block, or whatever the old expression was, as far as some of the stuff that she has said publicly, including recently. I mean, she had a whole meltdown online earlier this year talking about being estranged from her daughter, Brooke. And Brooke seems, shockingly, it seems like she might be the most normal one out of all of them, out of Nick and the mother and Hulk. And Hulk he had since remarried and was no longer with Linda Hogan anymore. And I'll be all over the place here. I'll go back to the SmackDown stuff in a second, the SmackDown tribute, as far as how they intend to honor him tonight on SmackDown. But another thing that I had seen was the AEW tribute, or lack thereof, for Hulk Hogan. I mean, I'm not really sure what people expected. First of all, if you're waiting on a tweet, on a fucking tweet from anyone to honor someone that you may have, respected or grown up idolizing or whatever, it's not really their duty or their obligation to honor someone for who first of all, sure, without Hulk Hogan would AEW even exist? Indirectly, probably not. I mean, again, we don't know. We will never know, obviously, unless you have a time machine to check an alternate timeline. We'll never know where wrestling would be today without Hulk Hogan coming around. If it wasn't Hogan, it may have been someone else. I could see that argument as well. If it wasn't Hogan, they could have found someone else to fill that role that Hogan was in, someone less problematic, and maybe AEW would still exist in a different form. We just don't know. But I had seen some people say, oh, how could Tony Khan not say anything? How could AEW not say anything? Tony Khan said 5 years ago, on my birthday, no less. I remember this because I was out on my birthday and I saw the tweet. I don't know if the tweet is still up, but Tony Khan tweeted 5 years ago, because not Linda McMahon, she's a real interesting one as well. Linda Hogan had tweeted something about the whole Black Lives Matter thing that was going on at the time, and obviously still is going on, but that was really when it was first following like the stuff that was going on in May and June of 2020, where it really ramped up again. And Linda Hogan made some sort of anti-Black Lives Matter comment or whatever she said on Twitter. Tony Khan responded, like this even means anything, but it was just funny that he said it. Saying that congratulations, both you and your husband or ex-husband, whatever, I don't know if they were together at that point, are banned from AEW. Like Linda Hogan would ever be at an AEW show anyway, But basically what Tony Khan was saying was, we do not approve of the stuff that you guys are guilty of, just the terrible people that you are and the stuff that you've said, the stuff that you've done in the past. And again, it's important to acknowledge all sides, the positive and the negative. I've seen a lot of positive. I've seen a lot of negative. I've seen a lot of people say, oh, how could anyone even bring that sort of stuff up? Like, how could Hogan get booed? How could Hogan get booed? Wrestling fans should be ashamed. That was something I saw a few times, by the way, on Twitter in the last 24 hours. Wrestling fans should be ashamed of themselves that Hulk Hogan's final appearance, which was on January 6th, by the way. I mean, I can't think of anything more fitting than that. Hulk Hogan's final WWE appearance, if you know, you know, I'm sure you would, being on January 6th of all days of the year is kind of fucking insane. But anyway, a lot of people insinuated wrestling fans should be ashamed that a legend the caliber of Hulk Hogan, how could he be booed in his final appearance? Because he was scheduled or rumored for Saturday night's main event. The other installments that he would, like, I think the December one, I don't know why he wasn't at that one. I think he was supposed to be there, but he had something else going on. I don't remember. The one in January, honestly, he may have been scheduled for it, but they held off because WWE got cold feet and didn't want him to get booed. I forgot exactly what the reason was as to why he wasn't at that installment. But he never ended up appearing, I don't think, at a Saturday night's main event. The newer version, obviously, since they brought it back before he passed away just recently. But yeah, like, people being shocked that he would get booed in his last appearance for the company. I mean, come on. Come on. Like, people saying, oh, how dare you boo a legend of Hulk Hogan? Like, this man died, and obviously we didn't know at that point that he'd be passing away in a couple of months. But it's like, if anyone should be ashamed, it's Hulk Hogan. I mean, he did that to himself. It's not even a politics thing. Honestly, if people don't like him for his politics or whatever, that is also justified. I really don't give a shit. I don't really approve of that sort of stuff. When he was going around doing the campaign stuff for Trump, I thought that was a little goofy personally, among other things, but that's not really important. And that's another thing, too. I haven't really seen a lot of people in the last day condemning Hogan for being, like, super involved in the Trump campaign and whatnot, and being super, the Trumpomania shit, the Hulkamania, whatever, in the last 6 months to the last year, and being super pro-Trump. People weren't saying, oh, I'm glad Hulk's dead because of that. It was really 95% of the stuff that I saw was, for anyone that was like happy or like relieved or didn't give a fuck about Hogan dying, was because of the racist stuff. Again, this man is on tape. Like, go back and listen to it. Like, you can't blame wrestling fans for not liking Hulk Hogan in life or in death, for him also not liking a certain demographic of people. And again, it wasn't as if he just used the word. Like, he used it multiple times and in a context where he made it very clear he does not, or he did not, I got to get in the habit of using past tense because now he's gone. He did not like black people. I mean, he made that abundantly, disgustingly clear on multiple occasions. And when he came back a few years later, instead of making like an attempt, a sincere attempt to really redeem himself, like Mark Henry's talked about how he reached out to Hulk. Maybe you should go speak at black schools to black kids and stuff like that and really teach them about how sorry he is, and really kind of go on like sure, it would really be designed to rehab his image, but if it was done, I mean, people will always hate him regardless, and that's totally okay. But it would be one thing if you still hated him after he made an attempt to apologize and be sincere about what he said, and I'm not that person anymore. Maybe I did feel that way at the time, or I didn't feel that way at the time. I didn't mean it. Whatever excuse he could have used, he could have tried to be better, but he didn't. Infamously at Extreme Rules 2018, backstage at that show, they had a meeting prior to the pay-per-view. I remember reading it that day. That day it came out on Twitter that Hulk Hogan was backstage at Extreme Rules, and a lot of talent were not happy with what he said. Now, they didn't probably say anything in the meeting itself. I think Titus O'Neil may have. But specifically the black talent on that roster, like, he kind of made the point of his speech, because WWE wisely, they were like, we're going to work with Hogan again. And if we're going to, then he has to speak to the roster and apologize. But he didn't really. He kind of just said, don't get caught, which wasn't the point of why he got canceled, quote unquote, in the first place. Titus O'Neil's talked about being there in that moment. He talked about it at the time. He's talked about it many times since. The New Day actually put out a great statement about it on Twitter at the time, that since kind of been revived and brought back in the last day with their thoughts on the whole Hogan thing. And they weren't like, oh, yeah, we forgive him. They never said they forgave him because he wasn't even really sorry. They just kind of said, time will tell to see if he's actually remorseful over his actions. And clearly he was not. That was 7 years ago. He had plenty of time to apologize and kind of repent for his sins or whatever the expression would be. He clearly did not. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know Hogan inside and out. I don't. I never knew him personally, never met the guy, never even interviewed him. I almost actually interviewed him about 4.5 years ago. WWE was making the rounds promoting the old school Raw show in early 2021, the first Raw of 2021. WWE, someone from WWE had asked me if I wanted to talk to Hogan. The thing was that it was kind of difficult, especially in light of all the stuff that was going on at that time with his ex-wife or then wife, Linda, whatever. It was kind of difficult to not discuss his controversies and have him answer for them or at least respond to them. And he was never going to do that, so the interview fell through. But as someone like, and I'll talk about my own personal connection to Hulk Hogan as far as why I kind of grew up a fan of his before I ever got into wrestling. But that would have been a cool opportunity to interview one of the most prolific wrestlers of all time. But I completely understood why it fell through and why it just didn't really make sense to do it. Because if he wasn't going to answer for stuff that he said years earlier, especially at a time in the world, I mean, now as well, but even especially in 2021, at like the peak, I don't know if you want to call it that, but like really when the Black Lives Matter stuff ramped up again in light of the riots and everything else, for him to not even address that and for us to give him a platform to discuss this fucking wrestling show would have been tone deaf. So we didn't do it. There would have been an opportunity even recently. I was speaking to like their company, this freestyle company, which just seems like a complete disaster. Maybe it'll work out. I doubt it will. Even if Hogan was around, I doubt it would have worked out. But they're exploring this venture. Our Hogan, Bischoff, and I've spoken to Bischoff before. I like Bischoff. Kurt Angle's involved now. The Kurt Angle thing, we were going to interview Angle. He was doing a conference call instead. We said that wasn't worth it. But, you know, if someone else from the company wanted to speak about this, maybe we can, you know, look into it. And Hogan's name was brought up as a potential interview. Nothing was ever officially set up. And this was while he was sick. This was literally like a week or so ago. This was like a week and a half ago that this person reached out asking if we wanted to talk to, Kurt, but then it turned into Eric or Hogan. And I'm like, okay, like maybe he'll discuss some stuff now. I mean, he's still toxic, but like, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what this turns into. And we never got that opportunity. I'm not really regretful of that. There was a point where I would have liked to have met Hogan, but ever since the racist rant stuff come out, it's like, is it even really worth it? Like, I've been at places where he was at. Like, I was at WrestleMania 21, or in 2021, at WrestleMania 37. He was doing a meet and greet at his beach shop. And I'm thinking, it'd be cool to meet him. He's one of the biggest wrestlers I haven't had any interaction with. Like, Rock I have never met, but he answered a question of mine at a press conference last year, which was cool. Stone Cold, I've interviewed twice over Zoom and over the phone. So, like, I've had interaction with them. I've never had any interaction with Hogan, aside from him retweeting me once 10 years ago while I was reading his book. So I thought, that'd be cool. But then I thought to myself, he's just not really worth it at this point, with just what he said and the lack of, again, it would be one thing if he said that, made mistakes, and then attempted to be a better person. I know we talked about being a born-again Christian or something like that and trying to really come to terms with God or whatever. He was baptized again or whatever happened a year or two ago. That's all well and good, but if you don't answer for some of the stuff that came out in the last decade plus, I mean, what does any of that even mean? So everyone is justified in feeling however they want to feel about Hulk Hogan, whether it be like if someone's mourning his loss because they grew up a massive fan of his and he was their favorite wrestler. Who am I to say oh, you shouldn't feel that way because that guy was a piece of shit? That's their own, if they want to be upset about it, that's totally fine. If there's someone else who says, I fucking hated the guy, I hope he burns in hell sort of thing, who am I or anyone else to say you should not feel that way? The guy was a legend. You shouldn't be saying that. For people to jump on immediately, the jokes, honestly, Twitter was on fire yesterday. The hateful stuff is one thing, but here's my answer to that. I said this kind of before, but I've seen a lot of other people kind of discuss how other people are feeling, which who gives a shit? If other people want to mourn him or not mourn him, shit on him, it doesn't affect you, so who gives a fuck, honestly? But here's what I say to that. I had seen a lot of people saying, how dare people be so hateful towards Hulk Hogan for passing? The man just died. How can you be so hateful? To which I say, how could Hulk Hogan be so hateful to say what he said about a certain demographic 20 years ago, 10 years ago when it came out, whatever, and then not really, again, come clean about it and sincerely apologize? I mean, and people making a comment about him on Twitter saying that they're glad that he's dead, maybe not exactly ideal, but Hulk Hogan did it to himself. It's not as if, oh, he was a terrible wrestler, like, fuck him, let him die or whatever. Like, obviously that would be extreme. If you didn't like him as a wrestler, that's not really relevant in this respect. It's all the personal stuff. That's why it's such a complicated legacy. His legacy in the ring is undeniable. Again, all the championships he won, the pay-per-views he main evented, the heights he brought to WWE at its peak in the 80s, making it a pop culture phenomenon, not only himself, but the company itself, and leading it to where it is today in the part that he played in that, as well as WCW, revitalizing WWE because WCW was doing better with the NWO and other stars during that time period, can't be denied. You can't deny any of that. To me, he is still on the Mount Rushmore. As far as wrestling, like in wrestling, he's on the Mount Rushmore. But you also can't deny the stuff that he said and did outside of the ring. It's like the Chris Benoit thing. Now, Chris Benoit killed people. He killed his family in addition to himself. But he was also an incredible professional wrestler. Like, he'll never go into the WWE Hall. I mean, obviously, what kind of conversation are we having at this point? What's worse, like what Hogan said or what Benoit did? Probably what Benoit did, I would have to say. I mean, he killed people. Hogan did not. But still, what Hogan did was still pretty disgusting. And, like, they took him out of the Hall of Fame. They put him back in the Hall of Fame. It's a fucking virtual webpage. Like, it doesn't even really matter. You know what I mean? But it is crazy to think that 2/3 of the original NWO are gone. Scott Hall passed away 3 years ago. Kevin Nash is the only remaining member. And he's had a tough go at it the last couple of years anyway, with his son passing away, Scott Hall passing away, other issues that have come up for him. So all the best to Kevin Nash, is, you know, as well as Hogan's family and friends, because they're obviously dealing with it too. And I can't speak to all of them. Like, it seems like Linda Hogan's a piece of shit. I don't know how she's processing the news, but, you know, people were still affected by this man's passing. So to those people, you know, my condolences, thoughts, prayers, that sort of stuff. So I'll get into my own, like, history with Hogan in a moment, but I do want to read this real quick. Pseudo said, many of them working in AEW have paid their respects. I don't think AEW as a company will or can pay an official tribute to Hogan on their programming. I mean, I don't know, it's that they can't, it's that they just don't want to, which, again, does it, like, who cares? Whether they do or don't, is it really necessary? I mean, WWE has snubbed so many people over the years as far as tributes are concerned. Sure, Hogan is one of, if not the biggest star in professional wrestling history. But it's not even as if he worked for the company. I thought it was very telling. It's very interesting to point this out. TNA had a live show last night, a show that I almost went to. But I don't have a card currently. It's still out of commission. They're working on it. I'm trying to get it back, like, today. I don't know if they're going to have it ready today. My point is, I almost went to that show. And they opened the show with the Hulk Hogan graphic saying, you know, rip Hulk Hogan. Tom Hannafin, the former Tom Phillips, said a couple words about his contributions to the industry as well as TNA. I mean, he did play a pretty significant role in killing TNA for a while there. I mean, in 2013 onward, for like a fucking decade, for a very long time, they put Hogan and Bischoff, put TNA in such a hole. And it wasn't just them, because they were also just completely enabled by Dixie Carter and the powers that be. But anyway, I'm glad they acknowledged it, especially for the time that Hogan spent there from 2010 through late 2013. And the lasting image of Hulk Hogan and TNA will always be Dixie Carter around Hogan's leg, which is just the funniest fucking thing. What a disaster that TNA run was for Hulk Hogan, who did absolutely nothing to promote TNA whatsoever, and people were pissed off about that, and understandably so. But anyway, I thought it was very interesting, especially for a live Impact, not even a tape show. They didn't do a 10-bell salute. And again, this was a guy that spent several years in TNA and is in one of the biggest stars in wrestling history. Maybe they were worried that he would get booed, and again, that's a legit, I don't know, concern. I mean, because if people want to boo, I mean, I wouldn't do that necessarily. They might do that. I mean, I would have to think they're probably going to do a 10-bell salute tonight. But WWE fans are far more casual. Like, there's definitely going to be a thank you Hogan chant. I would have to think on SmackDown tonight. I would be very surprised if you get the kind of crowd that's booing, there's going to be some boos for sure, but I think you're going to get the crowd that largely cheers the Hogan stuff tonight. I mean, the stuff with the Raw January 6th show, they were in Los Angeles, smarter crowd. Again, I don't blame them for what they did. I thought that whole thing was fucking funny. But that was also a very, I'm not saying this is entirely it, but we talked about it at the time. Hogan was very, very, very pro-Trump, obviously. He was part of the whole campaign. Trump talked about his passing. I think he tweeted about it yesterday. I mean, that's a very liberal city, is Los Angeles, to my knowledge. So, again, that could also play a factor in why they booed him, in addition to him just being a piece of shit. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really just him being a bad person and not being accountable for his actions. And the only person he has to blame for that is Hogan himself. My point is, I don't know. They're in Cleveland tonight, I think. Cleveland is not Los Angeles. So I would think largely they are going to be quote-unquote respectful towards the Hogan stuff. That's not confirmed. I mean, I'm very curious to see how that plays out. I'm sure they'll bring people in. I saw Hacksaw Jim Duggan was being brought in for the show. He tweeted about traveling to SmackDown tonight, which is nice because obviously he worked with Hogan. He was around to that period. So that makes sense. It is crazy, though. I mean, the more years pass, there was a time where a lot of people were just dropping dead left and right from that period in the 80s. Savage died in 2011. Dusty died in 2015. Roddy Piper died a fucking month after Dusty did. Warrior died in 2014. That whole thing was crazier. The way that he died and just it being so abrupt, and the day after he was on Raw, it was insane. And even, Warrior was accused of a lot of stuff. I mean, not even accused. He outright said a lot of bad shit. He just was not a great dude either. Towards the end there, it's hard to say. I mean, I kind of got into his stuff, and I've talked about my, personal history with Warrior as far as I didn't really know him for the wrestling stuff or any of the bad stuff that he did. I just saw him doing a lot of the inspirational stuff, and I was really affected when he passed because of the inspirational stuff he was doing before he passed. Was he still an awful person by that point? I don't know. I mean, no one's really, I'm not really sure. He seemed to be in better spirits before he passed. And again, I think he was another one where he wasn't really being held accountable. He didn't really hold himself accountable for stuff that he did, largely the shit that he said years earlier. And Hogan's kind of in that same boat. But the response to Warrior passing was a lot more heartfelt, and maybe just the internet was in a different place at that point 10 years ago. But again, Warrior, it was also because he was back, and he seemed to be in a better place. He seemed to be in better spirits. He had kids at that point that were younger when he died, and the whole thing was just shock. And not that there's a whole lot of love for Warrior now or a whole lot of hate, but Hogan he just actively makes himself look worse. Or he did, actually. Again, I got to get into the habit of using past tense. But the issue with Hogan was that he always actively made himself look worse, constantly. By never apologizing, just saying dumber and dumber shit. Shelton Benjamin, he was throwing around Shelton Benjamin's name in interviews when he was promoting his whole freestyle wrestling thing, but he called him Benjamin Shelton more than once. And Shelton Benjamin came out and said, basically, fuck him. I have no respect for Hogan. Stop, get my fucking name out of your fucking mouth. Pulling the old Will Smith meme, out there to address Hogan. It was very entertaining. So, at least Warrior, to his credit, before he returned to WWE, around that time, he wasn't really saying or doing a whole lot of stupid shit. He did in the 2000s, a lot of it. No denying that. A lot of crazy, batshit crazy stuff. But on the, bright side at least, prior to his WWE return, I don't think he was saying a whole lot of that sort of stuff. He was more so doing the inspirational stuff, as they mentioned. Hulk Hogan just always made himself look worse, even even up until a couple months ago, bro. This is not 5 years ago. This is even recently. He just was not doing himself any favors. But for those that had positive interactions with him, that's also cool. A lot of people, I saw a lot of great messages of people that were close with him, not even just close with him, but had, experiences with him that were very positive, including Maurice, actually, which is very random. But I saw on Twitter, she posted this on Instagram, her own relationship with Hulk Hogan. As far as he was very helpful towards her when she first got hired by WWE 20 years ago. And it was a really, really nice post. And it's like, I would love to think he was that person all the time. But someone that was that, that nice and whatever, or such a great, with a big heart, you hear that word a lot. You've heard that word a lot in the last day or two or whatever. with someone with such a big heart. How could he have such a big heart if he was so hateful towards, a certain kind of people, a certain demographic, people that had different colored skin? If he had such a big heart, maybe he did have a big heart, too big of a heart where he wanted a cardiac arrest. But in the sense that it's like, I mean, it's hard to feel super sad about it. For me personally, I was going to mention this before I go back and read some of the comments from Billy and Sudo, and thank you for sending in those comments, guys. But as far as me personally, I didn't get into wrestling until 2008. By that point, Hulk Hogan was gone from WWE, did not appear again for WWE for another several years. So I actually was not exposed to Hulk Hogan in WWE. Obviously I knew of his WWE stuff, but I was not exposed to Hulk Hogan in WWE until 2014. And I was very excited when he came back. Because Hulk Hogan, for all intents and purposes, belonged in WWE. And then again, the racist rant stuff came out, and it's like, okay, well, it definitely makes sense for WWE to part ways with him here. Whole tough situation. But anyway, as far as my own history with Hogan, I got into Hogan stuff, not got into his stuff, but I was already familiar with Hogan from Muppets in Space, as I mentioned. But he was also in one of my favorite movies as a kid. I don't honestly remember the other installments of it, but the Three Ninja movies. He was in the Three Ninjas High Noon at Mega Mountain, I think it was. Came out many, many, many years ago. I rewatched it 10 years ago because it had Hogan in it, and it was right after he got blackballed from the industry. But I rewatched it, and I became a Hogan fan kind of through that. He was in that movie, and I was like, I became a Hogan fan because of his involvement in that movie. So I was always a Hogan fan before I even ever became a wrestling fan. And like I said, I never met the guy, never interviewed him, had a chance a time or two, just it didn't work out, and I'm kind of glad it didn't. But I did go to his beach shop, and I did go to his restaurant. When I was in Orlando for Disney World 8 years ago, I visited his Orlando beach shop, and it was pretty cool. They had a lot of cool stuff. I bought a shirt while I was there. I have a few Hogan shirts, actually, a few NWO shirts. And his beach shop is really cool. There's another one in Clearwater. That was closed when I was in that area for Mania back in 2021. But Alexis and I ate at his restaurant, and quite honestly, the food was pretty fucking good. And I liked the vibes there, too. Like, they had music playing and shit. They had music playing, and, I thought I got a burger that was great. So I honestly kind of liked the restaurant, and I would love to go back at some point down the road. And then I was also at the Hogan Beach Shop. We literally stayed down the road from it. When we went to Disney World last month, our hotel was right down the road from the Orlando Hogan Beach Shop, which I was at back in 2017. So we went in, and it's a cool-looking shop. There's a lot of great memorabilia. They have a ring in the center of it, a cutout standee of Hogan and whatever. It was a really cool shop, but it changed a lot from the last time I was there in 2017. I don't want to say half the store, but a significant period or a significant portion of the Orlando Hogan Beach Shop is consumed, and for better or for worse, I'm just not a fan of it personally, with Trump stuff. Trump, not even just Hogan and Trump stuff, like just literally Donald Trump merch. And again, not here to talk politics, but I just thought that was kind of strange. I just want to support Hulk Hogan, or maybe not now, maybe not in 2025, but I just want to come in and just kind of look at the shit. Didn't buy anything while we were there, or anything like that. But I'm just looking around, and there's like Trumpomania t-shirts. There's a fucking Gulf of America sweatshirt. I'm like, really? Is this really necessary? A cool looking shop overall, though. I'm just shaking my head like, come on. Is this really necessary? Like, do we really need to be selling merch for the President of the United States and whatever? I just thought that whole thing was kind of strange. But yeah, the beach shop is cool. I was there just recently, just last month, actually, and I took pictures while I was there, so that was that. Let me backtrack a little bit here to what you guys have been saying in the chat for those that are joining us. First of all, thank you. Second of all, if you are here live, be sure to like the video. Do you want to shout out real quickly? I'll give you guys the channel member shout outs in just a little bit. I forgot to shout you guys out at the beginning of the stream. But do want to say thank you to everyone that supports the channel, supports the streams. Forgot to do the shout outs at the beginning of the stream here just because of the whole Hogan dying thing. But I will get back to that in a little bit. But if you are here live, be sure to like the video. I would greatly appreciate it. Anyway, in the chat, Let's see. Ba, 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 ba. Billy said, there's something with Chelsea Green. Not sure what she said, but she's out. She put out a tweet apologizing for whatever she said. So, yeah, I don't know what she said originally. I don't know if she posted it and then took it down or what happened. I did see the follow-up, and she could not have worded it any better, to be honest with you. She basically just said that she put out something addressing Hulk Hogan, and I think people may have interpreted it as her being dismissive, as like, how could you be so hateful or hurtful over Hogan dying or whatever? But she also said, I don't condone racism. I never have. I never will. Blah, blah, blah. I think it's disgusting. I think you should. I'm glad she acknowledged that because I feel like there's going to be a lot of whitewashing for the Hogan stuff this week on WWE television. They're not going to obviously address the fucking racist stuff, obviously. I wouldn't expect the company to on their own programming. But the wrestlers themselves, I mean, come on. Like, I saw Michael Cole on SportsCenter. Like, it's a nice tribute, but it really is difficult to discuss Hulk Hogan without discussing the racist stuff. I mean, even people who do not watch wrestling are well aware of that at this point. You can't ignore it. And again, for the fact that he didn't apologize for it, it wasn't as if he made a mistake and then he moved on from it or apologized. He never really did, at least not publicly. And he really should have. And even maybe not privately. And I'm like, come on. I mean, Titus O'Neil was asked about it, but he gave a very corporate, generic answer. I love Titus. Guy's got a first, first round or whatever, for fast pass or whatever the fuck you want to call it, ticket to heaven. The gates are already open for him when it's his time, hopefully in a long time from now. But he probably just didn't want to be negative. Because he goes, oh, my thoughts on it don't really matter. It's like, well, they kind of do. I mean, the guy asked about how his legacy was affected by the stuff that came out, his controversies in the last 10 years specifically, and how Hogan has handled it or lack thereof. And he kind of danced around the question. Listen, I'm not sitting here saying that we should all be celebrating that he's dead, but I'm also not going to say that we should just only be focusing on the positive, because the negative is just as important as the positive. I think both are equally important. Maybe even some more than others, but that's up to the person discussing it to kind of decipher it and discuss themselves. But yeah, I did see the Chelsea Green tweet. I thought she worded it very well. Pseudo said, let's see, Bischoff, let's see, what did he say? Bischoff and Hogan, TNA was such a shit show, my God. It really was. I mean, I was watching TNA at that point, but it was just such a fucking disaster that I was not watching TNA for probably the first year that Hogan and Bischoff were there. I watched the first show that they went live on Monday nights, but I didn't have DVR or cable where I was living at that point as a high schooler. So I just gave up on watching TNA. I watched in 08, I watched in 09, enjoyed the product for the most part, and then fell out of it. When Hogan and Bischoff came in, I largely fell out of it. And then got back into it in late 2010, early 2011, and the product wasn't much better. I mean, it had its bright spots, but there were a lot of points during that period where Hogan was all over the show and would never promote it. Would never promote it publicly. It bothered me then, and it still bothers me now. It's like, what an absolute waste of money for TNA. That was in way worse shape post-Hogan and Bischoff than they were before. Pseudo says, I did hear in a very uncomfortable, or an eerie uncomfort, rather, in the crowd on TNA when they paid their tribute. Yeah, again, I mean, that was a TNA crowd, too. That was a TNA crowd. That wasn't even like the WWE crowd. Like, I mean, I'm talking like if this was AEW, they would obviously fucking boo it. Like, AEW fans know better. They're going to shit all over Hogan. TNA, I mean, it's a casual fan, but it's not like they were chanting. I mean, they did chant thank you, Hogan, but it was kind of like an uncomfortable, like, some people were like, I don't really know if I should be chanting this. It was in Rhode Island. It's not like it's in the South. In the South, they definitely, like, if it was in Florida, I'm sure they would chant Hulk Hogan. But then again, Hogan hosted Mania in 2021 with Titus O'Neil and got booed when he came out in his own fucking hometown of Tampa. I mean, I was there for that one. That was crazy. Billy said, I think a lot of people got into wrestling at a certain age because of Hogan. It's a very tricky situation. It is very Benoit, because horrible human beings, because they're horrible human beings. But what they did for wrestling remains. It is, I mean, it's very similar to Benoit, not in what they did, obviously. I would say Benoit's is a little bit worse, but Hogan's is still pretty bad. It's hard to look at him the same way, though. It's hard to look at him the same way. I mean, I know people that have said I can't even watch Benoit's matches for two reasons. One, knowing what he would eventually do later in life. I'm basically watching a murderer. And second of all, knowing that the shit that he's doing in these matches contributed to what we saw later on. Both of those things are very, very, make a lot of sense. I think Hogan, people don't feel that same way about Hogan for two reasons. One, what he did in the ring did not contribute to him being a racist. I mean, it's not like he was this amazing person and then he got into the business and all the bumps he was taking made him a racist. That's not how that works. And two, people just may not want to watch Hogan's matches because a lot of them were fucking garbage. I mean, he did have a lot of classics. As far as favorite Hogan matches for me, I mean, I'm just picking the main ones because I wasn't watching when he was in his prime. I wasn't even watching when he wasn't in his prime either. I mean, I barely watched wrestling when he was wrestling. I mean, I wasn't really watching during that period. The only wrestling I remember him doing was in TNA. And honestly, that TNA Bound for Glory match that he had with Sting was actually somewhat decent. I'm going to be honest with you. That match is a guilty pleasure of mine. Against Sting at Bound for Glory. That might be his last major match, at least televised. And if it is, he went out on a high note because that was way better than it had any right to be. Despite still being a spectacle in maybe some of the worst ways, it was still fairly entertaining. 13 years removed from their Starrcade match. They had another match at Bound for Glory that actually wasn't completely terrible, shockingly enough. That's definitely not my favorite Hogan match, but I'm just saying. That one was fun for what it was. But, you know, the main matches, probably his match with Warrior is my favorite from Mania 6, just for the atmosphere, the circumstances, the outcome. An electric match. We just rewatched, Alexis had never seen it, but we watched the Rock match in Mania 18. I've seen it a few times, but she had watched it for the first time with me a few months ago, right before Mania this year. Awesome match. Again, another match all about the atmosphere in the Sky Dome in Toronto. Again, same arena, I believe. I think same exact stadium. Just what a crazy atmosphere and an excellent match. So those two matches, the match with Savage at WrestleMania 5 was also great. The match with Andre obviously isn't good technically, but it's a moment. And it is kind of sad in retrospect. I mean, he would have gotten booed, so I get it. That he couldn't be there. Because, you know, they started doing this whole Immortal moment thing into the WWE Hall of Fame, which I think is kind of stupid, but whatever. They did it. They want to induct matches and moments into the Hall of Fame. The first one really had to be, it doesn't matter what you think about the guy, but the first one really should have been that moment. I mean, the Mania moment is not, Hart and Austin might be the best Mania match ever, but the Mania moment is Hogan slamming Andre. That will never change. But they probably passed up on it because they didn't want Hogan to get booed. And Andre obviously hasn't been alive for decades, so he would be out there by himself getting booed by the Vegas fans. But then again, honestly, if they waited till next year, it probably would have been the same thing. So it's not even like, oh, we'll just wait until a year where he's not getting booed. Like, he probably would have always been getting booed. And then I would say, like, it would have been nice had they done it this year while he was still around. But at the same time, though, you can say the same thing about Bret Hart. You know, had they waited to induct Bret Hart versus Stone Cold while both guys are still around, I don't want to be morbid, but, like, what if Bret Hart passes away in the next year before Mania next year? Then you can't induct that match anymore. Bret Hart is also up there, so I'm glad they inducted that match while they still could. Would have been nice had they done the same thing with Hogan, because he was the only last living member of that match. Andre's obviously dead and has been for a very long time. So now when they do inevitably induct that match, they're going to have someone talk about it, but it's not going to be Hogan, which is unfortunate. But, you know, it is what it is. At least we got Bret Hart and Steve Austin in there. Let's see. Pseudo said, I saw a wild video today where apparently Hogan, after using a public restroom or something, basically his hands were dirty. He was obviously reaching out for tissues. But before he could use those tissues, he was approached by an African-American family, and he met them and shook hands with them, and then wiped his hands off. Was he originally going to... I don't see what you're saying here. This was taken in a pretty wild context. Hogan wipes his hands after shaking a black man's hand. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. That is pretty fucking insane. There was a lot of crazy Hogan videos. I haven't seen that one necessarily. Sure, it was, I mean, obviously, I don't think that's exactly like what he intended to do, but that is pretty funny knowing the context. I tweeted it today. Hogan, honestly, to me, you talk about the bad part of the legacy and the good part of the legacy. Part of his legacy you have to acknowledge and just admire for what it is are his unintentionally fucking hilarious tweets. And not because he meant to be funny. Hogan he'll always be Hogan, even in death. As far as some of the stuff that he tweeted, I would have loved, maybe someone did, I don't know. I would have loved for someone to have asked him about that TNA tweet that he tweeted while he was in TNA about the jabroni marks or whatever. He eventually deleted it like in the last year or two. But that tweet was so fucking iconic. And people still use that to this day. The whole working yourself into a shoot or whatever. Like, what was he thinking when he tweeted that? That was the night of Bound for Glory, I think, in 2011, when Bobby Roode lost, and I think people blamed Hogan, which I think it was Hogan's decision to not put the belt on Bobby Roode that night. He eventually won it a couple weeks later, which probably worked out for the best, to be honest. But anyway, like, what was going through his head when he tweeted that? There was that video that he posted of him pooping. Like, not the poop, but like him sitting on the toilet. I thought that's what you were talking about in your comment. That one got a good crack out of me. That one got a good pop out of me when I watched that earlier yesterday after the passing. That was fucking funny. Like, what was he thinking posting this shit? The Ninja Turtles thing, but that's not exactly what he wrote, was also pretty fucking funny, knowing what we know now. When he tweeted that back in 2014, before the rant stuff even came out. I mean, I could sit here all day, honestly, and rewatch and reread some of those tweets. And we don't have to talk about his matches. We don't have to talk about the racist stuff. We can just kind of go through his funniest tweets, for better or for worse. What an interesting individual. Fernando, what's going on? Thanks for joining. He said, good evening. Billy said, I watched Mr. Nanny so much as a child. Yeah, I've never seen Mr. Nanny. I know he was in the movie. I never watched it myself. Fernando said, rip to the Immortal, Hulk Hogan. Fernando said, wrestling is what it is today because of Hulk Hogan. Mentioned that earlier. And he also said, I'm a huge wrestling fan thanks to Hulk Hogan. Kadeem, what's going on? Thanks for joining. Kadeem said, I went to purchase SummerSlam tickets at Regal Cinemas until my phone is blowing up, and I was stunned when Hulk Hogan passed away Thursday. Rip Hulkster, thank you for the memories. Yep, Rip Hulkster indeed. But yeah, I didn't, I'm not getting tickets to watch it at a movie theater. I'll be at SummerSlam next weekend. But it's interesting, they're only doing it at Regal Cinemas. It would have been cool if they're doing it elsewhere too, like, I don't know if WWE's doing this. It might be just an AEW thing, but AEW actually, they do their pay-per-views at Dave & Buster's, which I used to watch all the WWE pay-per-views at Dave & Buster's back in the day. Not all of them. I watched a couple of them before they stopped due to the network, but it would be nice if WWE did that back in the day, you know, while their pay-per-views were still $60. They don't really need to do it now because it's on Peacock, so I get it. But, you know, at the same time, it would be nice if they were in Dave & Buster's. I feel like that's more easily accessible, in my opinion, than going to a Regal Cinemas, at least in my opinion. But, you know, I think that is still pretty cool, though. That will be an awesome experience. I watched a few AEW pay-per-views in theaters, and it was pretty fucking awesome. But, yeah, hope you can enjoy the show at a Regal Cinemas near you come SummerSlam. Yes, indeed, Fernando. He said the Hogan news broke as soon as you ended your stream. That is correct. It was like mere minutes after. Like, literally, we ended the show, and then within maybe 10 minutes, Mr. Marceau, who is here, by the way, he said Rip Hulkster. Then he also said, I mean, Benoit killed his family. I don't think the two are even comparable. As far as what they did, no, they're not comparable. But he's talking about as far as it's hard to appreciate what they did in the ring and separate, because some people can't. Some people can't separate the art from the artist. Knowing, like, and it's the same thing with actors who were accused of certain stuff, and when you watch back certain movies and shows, you can't really, I think it's unfair to blame people for that. I don't really think it's fair to blame people for continuing to enjoy those people's work either. I was watching an old Superman movie that had Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. I mean, Kevin Spacey's still around, but he's been accused of some pretty stupid shit, obviously. I still enjoy a lot of the movies that he was in. Seems like he's a pretty bad person, accused of some pretty bad stuff, but I still watch his movies. I'll still watch Hulk Hogan matches. There's Benoit matches I can enjoy, that because he was involved in a lot of great matches. Doesn't mean that I think these are great people, though. But anyway, yeah, it was soon after that the stream ended that the news broke. I had just wrapped up with Tommy, and it actually kind of worked out for the better, because I feel like if we were still live on the show yesterday when the news broke, you would have gotten my immediate reaction, but I would have been on for another hour. Tommy had to get going. I would have been running solo for like an hour plus, most likely. Talking about the Hogan news, which would have been nuts. So, probably for the best. Fernando said, I understand what he said, but really hours after the man passed, it's wrong to just swallow the negative stuff about him. Why does it have to be called whitewashing? I don't get it. I mean, it depends what we're talking about. Are you talking about on WWE television? I mean, it depends what we're referring to. Because again, I would say it's white. I mean, you can't ignore the negative stuff he was involved in and accused of and that he just flat out fucking said. If you just say rip Hulk Hogan, I think that's perfectly respectful enough. If people didn't want to do that, I mean, it's their prerogative. Again, it may not be you, it may not be me, but again, like I said earlier, there was a certain demographic. I mean, Hogan said a lot of, in that rant, some pretty damning, disgusting stuff about black people specifically. Those people have, I mean, not only just black people, like anyone really, anyone has any right to feel about him as they do. Had he not done that stuff, it would be a different story. But if Hogan had no respect for that demographic of people and just people in general, I mean, people in general, I'm not sure, but I mean, specifically black people, based on what he said in that rant, it's pretty bad stuff. If he didn't care about black people, then why should anyone care about Hulk Hogan? Regardless of what the color of your skin is. You know what I'm saying? Like, if he had that sort of hate towards a certain race of people, then who's to say that those people or anyone really shouldn't have hate towards Hulk Hogan? That's my point. I think the way that it was addressed on, I mean, again, it's whitewashing when you don't acknowledge the bad stuff, in my opinion. Maybe I'm using the word wrong. That's my opinion, though. I just feel like it's important when you're remembering Hulk Hogan, discussing his legacy, that you really should bring up everything. And everything that's relevant to both his legacy inside and outside of the ring. To just go on like Sports Center and discuss, oh yeah, he was so great, like that's just not necessarily true. I mean, some of the, gross stuff he was involved in, even behind the scenes in wrestling, sabotaging people's pushes and lives and lies and stuff like that, I mean, it was endless. I mean, Hogan was not an angel by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, he just passed away. But I think you can honor him and bring up the positive. For anyone just to discuss the negative stuff, you feel free to do what you want to do. But what I've been here for the last hour doing is discussing the positive stuff and the negative stuff. And that you don't have to feel a certain way, positive or negative or any way. If you don't care at all, then, it doesn't even matter. I just think it's stupid for certain people to be like, oh, other people should feel this way or that way or not do this. Would I have done that or made, jokes right in the interim or in the immediate aftermath of the man die? Like, when I say jokes, I'm talking about, like, it's not really a joke. Like, I saw a lot of memes that were pretty fucking funny. I'm not going to lie. And, I made the comment, as other people have said, his casket's not going under, it's going over, because he ain't putting anyone else over but himself, brother. That does not work for him, brother. I'm talking about, like, people just saying, fuck him, I don't care. I'm glad he's dead, blah, blah, blah. I get it. Honestly, I mean, who are you, who is anyone to say anything about that? Based on what Hogan said specifically. It's not like he just did one thing to one person. He spoke about an entire fucking race of people. I mean, that's pretty bad. Is it like the worst thing ever? No, we're not going to sit here and discuss stuff. Obviously, RJ's saying they're not comparable. Well, no shit. Obviously, they're not comparable. No one's saying they are. But I'm saying, as far as with Benoit, why I bring it up, and what Billy here said as well. He said, I didn't mean it like that. I meant to say from a human being standpoint or point of view or whatever. Most people die, they're celebrated, but both these things have wrestling legacies but are awful human beings. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I feel like those things make perfect sense. But both should be acknowledged in the same sentence as far as the good stuff and the bad stuff. That makes sense. But Pseudo said the exact same thing. Devon on Maven's channel in a video said certain WWE legends treated him really badly backstage and was racist to him. He didn't take any names or didn't mention any names. But I think it's understandable who he was talking about. Was he talking about Hogan? I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the video with Devon and Maven. Maybe he was. I don't know if that's a new video. You're probably talking about a video that Devon did with Maven a while ago. But it's possible. It would have been nice to name names so we know who's a racist piece of shit or was, still is. That'd be nice. But it's out there. People act like it's not a real thing or it should be kind of swept under the rug just because the man passed away. I mean, what difference does that make? Obviously, allow the family and friends and fans and stuff like that to mourn, which is nice. But at the same time, it's like you just got to acknowledge everything. I mean, Maria even said, well, Zach said, rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. Maria said, when Mike Tyson passes away, are we going to have that same energy and bring up the fact that he was convicted of rape? Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes, that should also be brought up. Again, you can't ignore the stuff that's happened. Will that be the entire thing that people focus on? Well, it depends on who you talk to. Mike Tyson also did a lot of great stuff too. The man's an icon. Is he a better human being than Hulk Hogan? I don't know. I can't really speak to that. I don't know either of them personally. I have no fucking clue. But yes, I just think it's ridiculous, especially when someone dies, especially when it's a pretty serious thing. I mean, again, Billy mentioned that as well. I mean, I love Stone Cold, but even Austin has a domestic abuse claim lingering over him. Yes. I mean, I don't even know if it's a claim. I think it was proven that it happened. If you're talking about the Deborah stuff from a long time ago, I mean, that's pretty well documented from a few decades ago. Again, when he passes away at some point, that will have to be acknowledged as well. Is that enough to completely overshadow his legacy for Stone Cold? Probably not. I'm not saying for better or for worse. I'm just telling you, in my opinion, is that going to overshadow the stuff that he did in the ring? Probably not. The Hogan stuff, I don't know if Austin ever really spoke about that publicly and apologized for it or whatever the fuck happened. Same thing with Tyson. I have no idea. But I mentioned earlier with Hogan, I feel like the biggest issue with him was the fact that he just never really made his situation better. He just would constantly make it worse. He just made it worse all the time. I mean, not with the racist stuff specifically, but like just with other stuff that he would say. It just like, he even talked about Benoit recently. He mentioned a comment about Benoit not that long ago. And he was like, I got to find it. Let me see. If you just type in Hulk Hogan Benoit, you can probably find it. He made the absolute dumbest comment. Yeah. This is crazy, bro. He was on Logan Paul's podcast, and he said, wrestling fans have forgiven Chris Benoit. Like, he was basically comparing it to him, saying, well, wrestling fans have forgiven Benoit. Why not me? It's like, bro, they're not, first of all, not the same thing. And second of all, who the fuck forgave Chris Benoit? And if you did forgive Chris Benoit for what he did, well, then you're just an idiot. I'm sorry. Everyone's entitled to feel how they feel, but you're just a fucking moron. I mean, that's just unforgivable shit. Or you can move on from it, sure, but I mean, or watch his matches, but to say, oh yeah, like, you can forgive him and put him in the Hall of Fame, I mean, come on. That's just ridiculous. That's just stupid. I mean, he just continued to have said dumb stuff as he went on later in life. But at the same time, I don't want to completely talk about the negative. Like I said earlier, he did a lot of positive stuff for wrestling as well. Wrestling would not be what it is today without Hogan. For better or for worse, I mean, again, the unionization stuff probably would have happened. That would have been a massive positive had it not been for Hogan many decades ago. If it wasn't Hogan, maybe it would have been someone else that messed up, the unionization plans for professional wrestling. Alexis is here saying, hey, sorry I'm late, y'all, but we're about to wrap up anyway, so it's fine. But at the same time, I mean, all the many matches he had, the many memories he created, the many fans he was responsible for bringing into professional wrestling, can't be overstated. The man's a legend. Well-deserved WWE Hall of Famer for what he did in the business specifically, and I don't think his position on the Mount Rushmore, at least in my opinion, not in terms of just wrestling ability, but for what he attributed or contributed rather to the business, can't be overstated, and to me that's undeniable. Specifically WWE and putting them on the map, the pop culture boom period they experienced because of him, the many people he worked with, and the many matches and moments he was responsible for. I mean, the man's one of the greatest of all time. I mean, the greatest of all time. And Michael Cole said that last night on SportsCenter. I don't know if I would go that far. Greatest WWE superstar of all time, maybe. WWE wrestler? I mean, again, what's more important? It's, depends on who you're asking. Superstar, probably. He definitely, to me, would be the greatest WWE superstar of all time. The greatest, professional wrestler of all time? No. Not even close. But he belongs in that Mount Rushmore for definitely WWE, but maybe even wrestling in general. But again, other people may not agree because maybe the damage he did outside of the ring was enough to where he doesn't belong on there. So again, it's All about who you're asking. Nick said himself, legend for what we watched, dirtbag outside of the ring, plain and simple. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's a complicated legacy because it's hard to look back on the positive without, he said also, sup peeps. What's up, Nick? Thank you for sharing that comment there. Thank you for joining us. It's complicated in the sense that you want to love what you watched back, but it's hard to also support him, or it was hard to support him up until modern day because of the shit. Like, it would have been awesome to meet Hogan and, share your favorite. I mean, a lot of people still met him anyway. Like, who cares? I'm just saying, for me personally, it's kind of hard to separate what he said from what he did. From what he did in the ring, I'm talking about. It's a difficult conversation to have. It's very conflicting. The conflicting feelings are probably the best way to put it in a single sentence. And I think Nick summed that up well. But Pseudo said, I mean, it does factually make sense. Y'all can help me, but if I'm not wrong, Hogan was back in WWE when Dudley Boys were in WWE as well, right? The comments in the video suggest it was Hogan. He's talking about what I mentioned earlier from his other comment, that Devon, when he was referring to racism he experienced in WWE back in the early 2000s, and he never named who it was, but people were assuming it was Hogan. I don't know. I mean, that would make sense. Hogan was there. The Dudleys were in WWE the first time from 99 through 05. Hogan came back in 02. I mean, I don't know how closely they really worked together. Hogan wasn't around a whole lot. I mean, he wasn't really around in 04 at all. He came back for one appearance in 05, so it would have had to have been in 02 or 03. So maybe, I mean, Hogan was doing stuff on Raw, though, in 02. I mean, kind of on SmackDown, too, in 02, where Devon was on SmackDown. I don't know. I can't really put the timeline together. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, who's racist and who's not. I have no idea. I know Michael P.S. Hayes was accused of some stuff with Mark Henry and or Bobby Lashley or whatever. Maybe Mark Henry, too, many years ago. Maybe he's referring to him. I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to say. Maybe some people are better at hiding it than others. I mean, Hogan, that's the thing with Hogan. Like, I don't know if anyone ever really claimed or accused him of being of him being a racist up until those tapes came out in 2015. I mean, those tapes were filmed in, 2008? That's a big difference of where people didn't really think that he was that way until it came out publicly that he was, because he admitted it himself in private, which obviously that stuff should have never leaked, but he also should have never said it. I mean, it is kind of an interesting thing to think about. Had those tapes never come out, and he was never accused of being a racist, the reaction to his death yesterday, I feel like, inevitably, undoubtedly, would have been a whole lot more positive. But maybe he would have gone down, I guess, what would that be? As a closet racist, I guess? Because we wouldn't, unless something else happened that we weren't aware of publicly, where you can kind of assume maybe he had some issues with a certain race of people, but it was never actually confirmed until it was in his own fucking words in a tape that, came out. And it's, again, if you listen to the context, it's pretty bad. Hate to sound like a broken record, but it is an interesting scenario. And it also makes you think, not only with Hogan, but like with other people that have passed, wrestling-wise and otherwise, how bad were some of these people that we just don't know? Was stuff that was not said publicly or just not known publicly, and you were supporting someone that you thought was so great for so long, and they actually weren't. I mean, it's interesting. You never really fully know someone unless you know someone, which we don't. We don't know these people personally. But, all the positive stuff that came. I mean, I don't think Dusty Rhodes was saying that sort of stuff, but what if he was? What if he was a racist at one point, but it was just never publicly confirmed or never really came out? But we look back at him as a legend, because the guy was a legend and he was amazing and he had a lot of positive contributions. So did Hogan. I mean, I would say Hogan had more negative contributions, but he also had more positive contributions as well, as far as the business he did for WWE. But anyway, interesting thing to consider there. Let's see. Billy said, I always look at it as, if you didn't have Hogan, would you have had Austin, Rock, etc., etc.? I saw someone say that yesterday. I don't know. I don't know if there's a clear-cut answer as to whether it's a yes or a no. I mean, those guys, it's not like those guys weren't born. Rock was always involved. He was probably always going to be involved in the business because of his family. But would the business be in a place where they would have hired Rock in 96 because if Hogan wasn't there? I don't know, because like I said earlier, had a Hogan not blown up the way that he did in 84, 85 with Hulkamania, would it have been someone else? Would Vince have found someone else for that spot? Maybe. I mean, you can argue he was a one in a million, once in a lifetime talent, was Hogan. He was in the right place at the right time. But maybe there were other people that were passed over for that opportunity because it was Hulk. Maybe he would have found someone, but he wouldn't have had the same lasting power that Hulk did. We'll just never know. But it's possible. I think there's a real chance that had Hogan not come around, we would not have had the Austins or the Rocks or people like that. It's hard to say. Fernando asked, two things. He said, it's been a tough week for stars from the 80s. Yeah, I had seen that star from the Bill Cosby show passed away. I wasn't familiar with him, but the guy was young, too. I think he was on vacation in Costa Rica, and he died, which is kind of crazy. I think he drowned, which is really sad. He's only 50-something, I think. And then Ozzy Osbourne, who passed away while we were live on the stream on Tuesday, passed away on Tuesday. So, yeah. Big week for passings of stars from the 80s. But Fernando said top 5 Hogan moments. I'm not going to go off a favorite. I'll go off of just top 5 in general. It would probably have to be when he slammed Andre, winning the championship for the first time from Iron Sheik at that house show at MSG in 1984. Those 2 moments, him and Rock at WrestleMania 18, obviously turning heel in 96 and forming the NWO. That would have to be one of them. And I don't know, what would the 5th one be? That's a good question. Top 5 Hogan moments. Winning the title, slamming Andre, him and Rock. Maybe Warrior, even though he lost that match, because that match is still pretty iconic. Definitely the WCW turn. I would say the next night on Raw, when he turned babyface in 2002, when he came out to the, not Real American or whatever, but he had that extended pop. I guess you can count that, but you can also count that as an extension of WrestleMania 18 because it kind of all blends together. But definitely the WrestleMania 18 match, which was amazing. No, him and Warrior was great. That was an amazing match, Alexis asked, but that was more about Warrior than it was Hogan. The moment itself was more about Warrior, so I'm not sure if I would include that in top 5 Hogan moments, but it might be, maybe him and Savage as the Mega Powers. I don't know what moment that would be. Maybe when they teamed at SummerSlam in 80. What would that have been? 88. Yeah, maybe him getting the belt back from Savage. Yeah, Malcolm Jamal Warner from the Cosby Show was who passed from the Cosby Show. That was the other third person who passed away this week. Him ripping his shirt, top 5 moments, Nick said. The shirt rip was obviously iconic. I don't know if there's a specific shirt rip that would be that 5th moment, but just the general idea of it will always be synonymous with the Hulkster. You know what, actually? I'll throw another one at you. Here's one I completely not forgot about. Mr. Marceau is in attendance for this moment, and I'm jealous that he was because it was an incredible moment. I'll give my top 5 once more, and I'll end with the one that I'm thinking of. Winning the title from Iron Sheik in 1984 at MSG, slamming Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3, the NWO heel turn in the summer of 1996, facing The Rock in 2002, and WrestleMania 18, and also the extended pop he got the next night on Raw. 5th one, his appearance at WrestleMania 30, when he called the whole Superdome, Skydome thing, whatever. Or whatever he called it. I think he called it the Silverdome, but it was the Superdome, whatever it was. That would have been WrestleMania 30, when he interacted with Rock and Austin, which was still one of the GOAT segments. Having those, because that moment will never, again, at this point, never happen again. And the only time they had interacted before that was prior to WrestleMania 18. Those 3 were in the ring together at one point, so it's not as if it never happened, but it never happened again after that, I don't think. An incredible segment. So probably that one. Him, Stone Cold, and Rock from WrestleMania 30. Billy said earlier, I think the issue with Hogan is the creative control in the 90s he had. In the 80s, you understand he was the main draw, but the 90s he struggled with allowing new blood, meaning Bret Hart, Taker have talked about that. That's not Hogan's main issue, but that was one of the knocks against him, was the massive, significant creative control that he was allowed during his time in WCW, for sure. He had a lot of great moments in WCW, too. He did put over Goldberg in that great Nitro match in Atlanta in 1998, that would have been. He got the belt back soon after, I think. But still, or not soon. Actually, no, he didn't. Hogan, Goldberg held the belt until Starrcade that year, I think. But anyway, he had some he had some bad matches in WCW. But the Goldberg match stands out, the NWO heel turn. The Sting finish sucked, but that was a memorable storyline that he was involved in. The finger poke of doom was a bad moment he was involved in. The Warrior rematch was a bad one he was involved in. So a lot of good and a lot of bad. Across his entire career, really. Fernando said, please someone put Mr. T and Sylvester Stallone in bubble wrap. Yeah, Mr. T, believe it or not at this point, is now, I thought of this morning. Think about this. Of the first nine, and WrestleMania 1 was only 40 years ago this year. Of the first 9 WrestleMania main events, only 3 people are still alive. Mr. T, from the first ever WrestleMania main event, it was a tag team match. Mr. T, who isn't even a wrestler, is the only surviving member of that match. Paul Orndorff died a few years ago. Hulk Hogan obviously just passed away, and Roddy Piper died 10 years ago. So Mr. T is the only surviving member of that match. WrestleMania 2 was Hogan and Bundy. Bundy died in 2019, so there's no one left in that match. That was inside of a steel cage. Mania 3, as we know, Hogan and Andre, both dead. Mania 4, that was DiBiase and Savage. So Ted DiBiase is still alive, so he's that second person I mentioned that's still alive from the first 9 Mania main events. He lost to Savage, who died. 5, Hogan and Savage, both dead. Mania 6, Hogan and Warrior, both dead. Mania 7, that would have been him and Slaughter, right? Him and Slaughter was Mania 7. Slaughter's still alive, so he's the third person that's still around, thankfully. Slaughter's still around. And let me think. Slaughter's still around, but Hogan's not, obviously. Mania 8, Psycho Sid Justice died last year, actually. So you can't count him. Hogan and him was the main event for Mania 8. WrestleMania 9, I mean, technically it was Bret Hart and Yokozuna, but the real last match was Hulk Hogan and Yokozuna. The advertised main event was... The advertised main event was Yokozuna and Bret Hart. But if you want to include Hogan and Yokozuna as the main event, they're both dead. Yokozuna died a long time ago, so... And that would be it. And I guess Mania 10 would have been Bret Hart and Yokozuna, and Bret Hart won. So of the first 10 WrestleMania main events, only 4 people are still alive. Bret Hart, Mr. T, Ted DiBiase Sr., and Sergeant Slaughter. Put all those people in bubble wrap. Let's see. Pseudo said, I mean, the stuff he was talking about is ridiculous, like refusing to shake hands, and the stuff he said also made Booker T angry. But now that you said it, it could have also been Hayes. Who knows? I'm talking about the Devon racist stuff. Pseudo said, to be frank, now that I looked at the comments, they also say Lawler or Pritchard. It's a shit show. It's all assumptions. Yeah, we just don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, like, oh, this person, could they be a racist? Like, Hayes has stuff out there against him, so that's the only reason why I say him. Maybe it was Lawler. Maybe it was Bruce Pritchard. We don't know. I mean, is there anything out there about them as far as that stuff is concerned? I don't think so. So I feel kind of bad at, pointing fingers at, oh, this is the person they were talking about. The Hogan one is easy to point to because we know he has said shit in the past about black people. But it's hard to say whether he treated Devon poorly. Maybe Devon can clear the record at some point and say that it wasn't him. That it wasn't Hogan, it was someone else. I don't know. Has he put out anything about Hogan, in the last day, saying Rip Hogan? Maybe he's not really on social media. I'm not sure. He has a show, I think, so, or a YouTube channel, so maybe he'll explain there. Pseudo said him blading himself right in the middle of the ring is a top 5 contender. Hogan, blading himself in what match? What match would you be talking about there? Billy said, I would say his top 5 more, moments, in his opinion. 1, Andre, 2, Warrior from Mania 6, 3, Rocky from 18, 4, saying Silverdome at Mania 30, and 5, The Rock match. You put Rocky twice. Were there 2 Rock matches you're talking about? What was, 3? Oh, being in Rocky. Okay, I was going to say 3, being in Rocky. Yeah, being in Rocky 3. Because you put 3. Okay, I was confused. Yeah, I mean, if you're including other stuff he's done outside of wrestling, then sure, if you want to include Rocky 3, that makes sense. To me, my still favorite Hogan movie role was Muppets from Space. I will stick with that, but Rocky 3 is a perfectly fine choice. I've never seen Suburban Commando, despite the fact that I love Christopher Lloyd and Hulk Hogan was in that movie. I still have yet to see that movie, but it is pretty cool that Christopher Lloyd tweeted about Hulkster, saying Rip Hulkster yesterday, and posted that picture. I thought that was pretty cool. Maria said, did Hogan come up with the wrestlers from the 80s saying brother? I don't know, actually. Because I know that Dark Side of the Ring on Superstar Billy Graham came out, and he mentioned, or it was said in that episode, that Hogan kind of took a lot of his verbiage from him. So I want to say maybe he kind of popularized it. I'm not really sure. But he may have been the top one. I don't know. He may have been the first to really kind of bring it into the limelight. I'm not sure. Billy said, who will ever forget the Jeff Jarrett laying down and Russo calling him out? I mean, no one will ever forget that. That's some pretty crazy shit. The Bash of the Beach 2000 incident, they did a whole Dark Side of the Ring on that a few years ago. Very interesting episode. Pseudo said, I think it was a match on Nitro. I don't remember. The whole blading himself in the middle of the ring. I don't know. I'm not overly familiar with Hogan's WCW work outside of the main moment, so I'm not sure. Yeah. All good moments, though. All good moments worth rewatching and remembering. Thank you guys for tuning in here today, remembering Hulk Hogan and discussing his very complicated legacy, in my opinion. It's pretty plain and simple. I think Nick put it pretty well. He worded it well earlier in his chat, but I think it's also good to remember a lot of the great stuff he was responsible for between the ropes, like we just talked about, some of those moments and matches that at some point maybe I'll throw it on YouTube and we can watch a video. Not doing a watch along we're talking about, but I know WWE Vault actually is doing a watch along of the best Hogan matches or moments or whatever right now, like a YouTube live stream. So if you're in a Hogan mood to watch some old stuff, well, they're doing it right now in WWE Vault. Fernando said, more shocking heel turn, Hogan or Cena? I mean, it's honestly harder for me to say because I wasn't watching in 1996. I would say Hogan, because the Cena one I kind of thought might happen after he foreshadowed it at the Rumble press conference. I want to say Hogan. I feel like people still did not think Hogan would go heel in 96. Cena was a babyface for longer. So, I mean, the Hogan one was a much bigger deal ultimately. The Cena one has sucked. I mean, the Hogan heel turn, I don't know if the Hogan one will ever be beat. I'll probably go Hogan. There might have been more rumblings about Hogan going heel in 96 than Cena in 2025. But there was, we even talked about the possibility of Cena going heel before we actually did, and I poo-pooed all over the idea, and I'm kind of glad I did because this run has sucked. But I'm gonna say Hogan. But I might have to leave that up to someone who was actually living through that period. Pseudo said, what movie had Hogan as a galactic warrior coming on Earth and learning about life on Earth? I have a vivid memory of that movie. I have no idea. That sounds like a direct-to-DVD movie that you would buy for $1 in that bin at Walmart. I have no idea. It sounds like a movie he would be in. I have no idea what it would be called, though. I have no recollection of that whatsoever. And Billy said, Hogan's heel turn worked. The Cena heel turn has been hideous. The heel turn itself for Cena is worth noting here. The execution was awesome. The follow-up sucked. What led up to it also was not great because it just didn't make sense. The Cena one has made a lot less sense than the Hogan one did. The Hogan one made sense pretty much immediately. The Cena one never made sense. It hasn't made sense, and the execution has sucked. The execution of the turn itself was great, but what came after it has been bad. I agree with that. The only other one that was shocking was Austin McMahon, but it didn't work. Hogan's did. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Cena's heel turn is more honestly similar to the Austin one because the Stone Cold Steve Austin one was also botched in the aftermath. And honestly, even Stone Cold's heel turn was better than Cena's. At least as a heel, Steve Austin was very entertaining and still having great matches. Cena's matches have not been great. Cena's more so past his prime than Austin was at that point when he was WWE champion in 01. And he was also very entertaining as a heel. People didn't want to boo him, mind you, but at least they changed the music and shit. I mean, I think they already changed the music anyway. But anyway, yeah, I think even Austin's heel turn is probably more comparable to Cena's as far as it just not working. But at the same time, though, even his was more entertaining than Cena's has been. Billy saying it's Suburban Commando. Maria said the same thing. So, Pseudo, the movie you're describing is Suburban Commando. I know Suburban Commando. I did not know what that movie was about. Okay. That's the movie with Christopher Lloyd in it. Honestly, the fact that I have not seen that movie, like I said earlier, that just the fact that Christopher Lloyd's in it and Hulk Hogan and I've never seen it before, I'm going to have to go back and check it out. So maybe I'll watch it and review it here. Maybe not on the channel, but probably in Letterboxd at some point. So I'll have to go back and watch that at some point. So keep an eye out for that in my Letterboxd reviews. I did see Fantastic Four last night and thought it was great. So you can check out my review of that movie over on Letterboxd if you're curious. Fernando said, I was 5 years old when I saw Andre turn on Hogan by tearing the shirt and cross from him. Wow. When he turned on him, you were 5 years old. That's crazy. Also a great heel turn, by the way. A very underrated heel turn was Andre's. Not even just Hogan's, Andre's. When Andre turned heel, because he was a babyface up to that point, he went undefeated. I mean, undefeated, quote-unquote, because he was beaten by count out, and I think he was even pinned in certain places. Beaten by DQ and shit, but he had been a beloved babyface everywhere he went up until he signed or aligned with Bobby Heenan to oppose Hogan, who had been his friend up to that point, for Mania 3. So another great heel turn, the way they executed that, and obviously the moment itself of Mania. The match itself is whatever, but the moment is pretty spectacular when he finally slams Andre, which had been also done before prior to that point, but not on the same stage or the same scale. That was WrestleMania 3. So, good shit, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it for this surprise stream on a Friday afternoon. Went about an hour and a half here today. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy your Friday. Before we head on out of here, Billy's got a question. He said, Graham, I know this is about Hogan, but I got to ask you. I saw a rumor that WWE have signed a former AEW champion who will appear at SummerSlam. Thoughts on who it is? Did that come out in the last hour or two? Because I do not know what you're talking about. I have no idea who that would be in reference to, and I don't know who that would even be. When you say former AEW champion, you're talking former AEW world champion? You're talking about like a Chris Jericho. Like Chris Jericho might be the only one that comes to mind, because I think his contract is up in a couple months. I'm not sure how many people would want to even see that at this point. To be honest with you. If you're talking AEW World Champion, then Jericho might make sense. Otherwise, who would it even be? Kenny Omega? Like, he's not going anywhere. AEW Champion, period, I have no idea. Britt Baker, but I heard her contract isn't up until next year. I'm not even sure that rumor is true. I don't think that's even true, because I haven't seen that. But maybe something has happened in the last couple of weeks or the last couple of hours since I was live that I just haven't seen, so I'm not sure. Pseudo said Hogan ripping his shirt and substituting the Hulkamania shenanigans with Trumpamania was so unnecessary and embarrassing. I mean, hey, that's just, he's friends with Trump, so that's what he wanted to do. I wouldn't condemn the guy for shit on him in his death for doing that sort of stuff. I don't really think that. I mean, his politics are his own business. I would more so shit on him in his death. For people that are, it's more about what he said, about what he said about a certain race in a certain video that came out a certain amount of years ago. Not so much the politics shit, but, I can't really say I was enamored with it, but, that's my own personal opinion with the stuff he's been involved in the last year. The Sting heel turn with the Hummer was also trash. In WCW, yeah, I wasn't watching, so I can't say, but it probably was. Worse than Cena's, Fernando said. Billy said it didn't say it said a former champion, so it could be a male or a female. I can't remember who reported it, but it was fairly credible. Interesting. If I see anything more about it, let me know. I'll talk more about it on WrestleRant Radio next Thursday. So we will be live before then, though. Here's the schedule for next week. Usual schedule, unless someone else major passes away. We will be on #AskGSM on Tuesday. So be live for that. Join me live for that on Tuesday afternoon. And then WrestleRant Radio on Thursday, our preview and predictions for the pay-per-view coming up next weekend, next Saturday and Sunday, which I will be at next weekend in New Jersey. So I'll be live before then for predictions next Thursday, #AskGSM on Tuesday. WrestleRant Radio specifically, probably on the earlier side, around maybe 10 a.m. We'll see, depends on Mr. Marceau's schedule next Thursday. Because I got to hit the road after that. I'm not flying there, I'm driving there. And I'll be in New Jersey by Thursday afternoon to enjoy SummerSlam weekend. And then while I'm there, we'll see what kind of content I post. Probably just excerpts from the podcast, maybe an interview or so if we can. I don't even know if they're doing interviews at the event itself. They usually do. But I'm not sure. I haven't really heard anything from WWE as far as that. I just know I'm going. I'm approved, and that's all I know right now. You're welcome, Billy. He said, thanks, Graham, as always. Pseudo says, good night, everyone. And Fernando said, it was Fantastic Four better than Superman? In my opinion, no. I wouldn't. It's hard to compare. Like, I just enjoy things for what they are. If you were really comparing here, I did think Superman was better, but I thought Fantastic Four was great. Obviously, the best version of it they've done to date. Better than like the 05, 07, 2015 movies. It's not even close. It's a pretty low bar to clear anyway, but I'm happy it was a great movie. I was kind of worried it wouldn't be good. and that Superman would completely overshadow it. But there was a lot of people there last night when I saw the movie. So, I mean, the movie should do well financially, hopefully. I think Marvel needs that right now, and they can kind of get back on track. I really like Thunderbolts, and I like Brave New World. So I think this was honestly better than both of those movies, and I thought Thunderbolts was actually really good. I do think this was better, though. Just my opinion. But anyway, guys, on your way out, be sure to like this video. I would appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But liking the video, at the very least, is a great way to support the channel, in addition to becoming a $5 a month channel member. All WrestleRant All Access Pass. You get shout-outs at the beginning and end of every single live stream that we do here on the channel, at least when I don't forget. So I apologize for not mentioning these fine folks earlier, but shout-out to Alexis, Miss Maud Matthews, Dillon, DiGiacomo, Mrs. Renee, DJ Swerve1 at Swerve1 on IG, Daniel Malcolm at I'm Quarter on X, Mr. Marceau is at RJ_Marceau on X, John Ritland right here on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland, Richie right here on YouTube as well, Red Planet Wrestling here on YouTube, and The Average Grunt at The Average Grunt on X. Thank you to those fine folks for supporting the channel. They get a badge next to their name. They get first dibs on hashtag AskGSM and WrestleRant Radio as far as questions sent in and topics sent in and stuff like that. You get early and ad-free access to certain videos if you are a channel member, and so many more perks. More information on that down below in the description box. And be sure to like this video on the way out. So with all that being said, folks, enjoy the weekend. A wrestling-free weekend, I think. Right, aside from Collision tomorrow, I think this is the first weekend with no wrestling pay-per-views in a few weeks. I think since 4th of July weekend, which is great. So I'll be enjoying that. I'm hoping to see Mr. Marceau tomorrow for Boys' Day, but that's only if I get my car back. So far, I've gotten no phone calls, so that I guess that means that I'm not getting my car back today. But I guess we'll find out. I got to do more research on that front. But anyway, Billy said, "Is Superman good?" It is. I thought Superman was great. Definitely go check it out. Go watch Fantastic Four as well. Support DC, support Marvel. I'm more of a Marvel person, but I think DC, I'm confident they can turn things around with Superman being the first building block. I thought that was a great movie. So yeah, Superman was very good. And Maria said, please invite Tommy again. He was lots of fun. Tommy was awesome. Thank you for that feedback, Maria. I thought Tommy did an awesome job. He's been on the show before. He's not like a hardcore wrestling fan, but he's enough of a wrestling fan where he can comment and stuff that's going on. And I thought he did an excellent job. And he's also a big Marvel and DC guy. So speaking of which, he speaks a lot about that sort of stuff on his 2 different podcasts. Screen Crush, check that out on YouTube, as well as Guardians of the Galaxy. Not Galaxy, Galaxy. He does an awesome podcast with a couple other people reviewing stuff like Fantastic Four. I know he also saw the movie last night, so support him as well. He's fantastic. Anyway, folks, have an awesome one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll catch your ass down the road. Rip Hulkster.